Sarah lived in a house that felt like a warm hug. It wasn't a new house, not at all. Its wooden floors creaked softly under her feet, telling tales of all the steps taken over many years. Sunlight spilled through the lace curtains, making dust motes dance in the air like tiny, happy stars. Every room was a treasure chest of memories. The old armchair in the living room, worn smooth from years of reading bedtime stories, held the ghost of her children's laughter. The kitchen, with its cheerful yellow walls, still smelled faintly of the cookies she used to bake with her grandchildren. Sarah was a grandmother, a kind one with soft, crinkly eyes that always held a sparkle. Her hair, once the color of autumn leaves, was now a beautiful silver, braided neatly down her back. She loved her quiet life in this old house. It wasn't lonely, it was full. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. Full of the past, full of the present, and full of the quiet hope for the future. She'd spent her whole life here, raising her daughter, Emily, within these very walls. Now, Emily had grown up and had children of her own, who often visited, filling the house with new sounds and new memories. The house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was a living scrapbook. On one wall hung a faded photograph of Sarah as a young girl, her grin wide and missing a front tooth. Next to it, a picture of her wedding day, her husband's arm strong around her. He had passed away many years ago, but his presence was still felt in the sturdy oak desk in his study and the scent of his favorite pipe tobacco that sometimes seemed to linger near the fireplace. Each piece of furniture, each trinket on the mantelpiece, had a story. The chipped ceramic bird on the windowsill was a gift from Emily when she was 5. The old grandfather clock in the hall, with its slow, rhythmic tick-tock, had marked every important moment in their family's history. Sarah often spent her afternoons in the sunroom, knitting colorful blankets for her grandchildren or reading a good book. Sometimes she would just sit and look out at her garden, where roses bloomed in a riot of pink and red. She felt a deep connection to this place, a sense of belonging that warmed her heart. The house was a quiet companion, a keeper of secrets and joys, a silent witness to a lifetime of love. It was a place where stories were born and where they lived on, tucked into every corner, waiting to be remembered. One crisp autumn morning, a rare burst of energy spurred Sarah into action. The attic, a place usually reserved for forgotten treasures and dusty dreams, called to her. It wasn't a chore she usually tackled with enthusiasm, but a strange feeling, a whisper of curiosity, urged her upwards. The wooden steps creaked a familiar tune as she climbed, a soft echo in the quiet house. The attic was a kingdom of shadows and shapes, smelling faintly of old paper and cedar. Sunlight filtered through a small, grimy window, illuminating dancing dust motes, much like those in her living room. But here they seemed to hold older secrets. Piles of forgotten things stood like silent sentinels. An old rocking horse missing an eye, stacks of yellowed newspapers, hat boxes filled with bonnets from another era. Sarah pulled on a pair of gardening gloves to protect her hands from the grime and began to sort through boxes, each one a tiny time capsule. She hummed a little tune as she worked, carefully lifting old blankets, folding them neatly, and setting aside items for donation. She found her daughter Emily's old report cards, a collection of seashells from a long-ago family vacation, and even a tiny handmade doll her mother had sewn for her when she was a child. Each discovery brought a smile to her lips, a gentle wave of nostalgia washing over her. Then, tucked away in a shadowy corner, behind a stack of moth-eaten quilts that had once warmed her grandmother's bed, she felt something solid. It wasn't a soft blanket or a stack of papers. She reached deeper, her fingers brushing against rough wood. With a grunt, she pulled out a small wooden box. It was plain, unpainted, and looked very old, covered in a thick layer of dust. The box felt heavy in her hands, heavier than its size suggested. It had no lock, just a simple metal clasp that was rusted shut. She tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Sarah found an old screwdriver and carefully pried the clasp open. Inside, nestled amongst more layers of dust and some brittle dried flowers, lay a single, thick envelope. It wasn't just any envelope. It looked ancient, its paper yellowed and crisp with age. Her heart gave a little thump. This wasn't just old, it felt important. Sarah carefully lifted the thick, yellowed envelope from the dusty wooden box. It felt fragile, as if it might crumble in her hands. She blew gently on it, sending a small cloud of ancient dust into the air. The paper was rough to the touch, unlike any modern stationery. Her fingers traced the edges, noting how the glue on the flap had hardened over time, still perfectly sealed. Her eyes, usually so calm, widened as she looked closer at the front of the envelope. There, in faded, elegant script, was a date. It wasn't written. The date, barely visible but clear enough to read, was July 14th, 1953. Sarah gasped softly. That was years before she was even born, decades before she had even met her late husband. Who could have written this letter, and why was it hidden away in her attic? A shiver ran down her spine, not from cold, but from a growing sense of mystery. She gently turned the envelope over, her heart now thumping a little faster. On the back, in the same beautiful flowing script that marked the date, were two words that made her pause. My dearest Sarah. Sarah blinked. My dearest Sarah, she whispered, aloud, the sound small in the quiet attic. Who could have addressed a letter to her from so long ago? It couldn't be her, not directly. She wasn't alive in 1953. Could it be another Sarah? Perhaps a relative she didn't know about, or someone from a distant branch of the family tree. Her mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. The handwriting itself was a work of art. Each letter carefully formed, loops and flourishes, adding a touch of elegance that was rare in today's quick notes and emails. It spoke of a time when writing a letter was a thoughtful, deliberate act. She held the envelope up to the faint light, admiring the careful strokes of the pen. The ink, though faded, was still a deep blue, showing it was not just a hurried scribble. It was clear that great care had been taken by the person who wrote it. This wasn't a bill or a junk mail advertisement. This was a personal message, one that had been kept secret for a very long time. A mix of feelings swirled inside her. Curiosity was the strongest, urging her to open it right away. But there was also a touch of fear. Old letters, especially hidden ones, often held secrets, and secrets could sometimes be unsettling. What truth could be so important that it was kept sealed for over 60 years? And why was her name on it? The weight of the untouched letter felt heavy, as if it carried the unspoken words of a ghost. She imagined the writer, sitting at a desk, carefully choosing each word, sealing the envelope with a silent prayer or a heavy heart. Sarah decided she couldn't open it here, amidst the dust and shadows of the attic. This letter, whatever it contained, deserved a quiet, bright space, a moment of reverence. She carefully tucked it into the pocket of her apron, a sudden need to be alone with this discovery taking hold. The rest of the attic cleaning could wait. The mysteries of the past were now calling her much more loudly than any dust bunny. With the old letters safely tucked away, Sarah carefully descended the creaky attic stairs. Her mind buzzed with questions, each one swirling around the mysterious envelope in her apron pocket. Who was this other Sarah? Why had the letter been hidden so well? And what secrets could a letter from 1953 hold that were meant for her? Or perhaps someone like her? She walked into her quiet living room, the familiar comfort of her home now feeling a little different, as if a new secret had just entered its walls. She settled into her favorite armchair, the one where she read to her grandchildren, and carefully pulled out the letter. Holding it in her hands, she felt a strange mix of excitement and a tiny bit of fear. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, eager to see what lay below, but also a little scared of the unknown. The excitement came from the thrill of discovery, like finding a hidden map to a treasure she never knew existed. Her whole life, she thought she knew her family's story, the roots from which she grew. But this letter, from before she was even a twinkle in her parents' eyes, hinted at a forgotten chapter, a missing piece of the puzzle. It promised to reveal something new about her past, about her family's history, perhaps even about herself. Yet, a small knot of fear tightened in her stomach. What if the truth was upsetting? What if it brought sadness or confusion? Secrets kept for so long often carried heavy burdens. Sometimes it was better for old secrets to stay buried. But now that it was in her hands, sealed and waiting, she knew she couldn't ignore it. The letter had chosen her, it seemed, to be its reader. She thought about her mother, who had always been a quiet woman, not one to share many stories about her own childhood. Sarah wondered if her mother had known about this letter, or if she had been part of the secret. The thought made Sarah's heart ache a little. She wished she could ask her mother, but that was no longer possible. Taking a deep breath, Sarah looked at the elegant handwriting once more. The beauty of the script seemed to soften her worries a little. This wasn't a threatening message. It was a personal one, written with care. It felt like a voice from the past, finally ready to speak. The mystery was too strong, the pull of the unknown too powerful to resist. She knew, without a doubt, that she had to open it. Whatever truth lay inside, she was ready to face it, or at least she hoped she was. The moment had come. Sarah held the sealed envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. She took another deep breath, the scent of old paper and something faintly floral rising from the envelope. It was as if the past itself was breathing. She didn't want to tear it, fearing she might damage the precious contents or the elegant handwriting. Instead, she carefully slid her smallest finger under the dried glue of the flap, gently coaxing it open. The seal, after more than 60 years, finally gave way, with a soft, almost inaudible crackle. Inside, folded neatly, were several sheets of paper, also yellowed with age. They felt thin and delicate, like butterfly wings. Sarah carefully unfolded the first sheet, smoothing it flat on her lap. Her heart was beating a quick rhythm against her ribs, a drum roll for the words she was about to read. The sun, now lower in the sky, cast a warm, golden light across the page, making the faded blue ink a little easier to see. She saw the familiar, beautiful handwriting, so clear and deliberate. The first words were indeed, "My dearest Sarah," just as on the envelope. But below that, the letter began to unfold its tale. Sarah's eyes scanned the lines, her mind trying to take in each word, each sentence. It was a long letter, spanning several pages, and she knew she had to read it slowly, carefully, to understand its full meaning. The opening lines were gentle, almost apologetic. The writer spoke of a great secret, one she had carried for many years, and a hope that one day it would be understood. Sarah, leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, her gaze fixed on the page. The world around her seemed to fade away. The quiet tick of the grandfather clock, the distant hum of a car, even the chirping birds outside her window. All of it disappeared. There was only her and the words on the page, a voice from the distant past reaching out to her across the decades. She began to read properly, letting the words form pictures in her mind. The language was formal, yet filled with deep emotion. It spoke of love and loss, of difficult choices and hidden truths. Each sentence pulled her further into the story, a story that was clearly very personal, very important, and one that had been kept silent for far too long. The weight of the secret, once held by the sealed envelope, now began to transfer to Sarah, settling in her heart with every word she read. Sarah's eyes moved quickly over the first few lines, then slowed as a name appeared. "My name is Eleanor," the letter began, "and if you are reading this, then enough time has passed for the truth to finally be known." Sarah's breath hitched. Eleanor. The name felt both new and strangely familiar, like a half-remembered tune. She continued to read, her gaze fixed on the elegant script. Then came the words that made her world tilt slightly on its axis. "I am writing to you, my dear Sarah, as your biological grandmother." The words hit Sarah like a gentle wave, but one that completely reshaped the shoreline of her understanding. Her biological grandmother, not the woman she had always known as her grandmother, her mother's mother, who had passed away many years ago. This was a different grandmother, a secret one, a grandmother from before she was even a thought. Sarah felt a strange lightness, almost as if she might float right out of her armchair. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of this new, unbelievable piece of information. She had always believed she knew her family tree, the branches and roots clearly defined. But now, a whole new branch had appeared, one she never knew existed, stretching back into a hidden past. Eleanor's letter explained that she had lived a life of quiet sorrow, carrying this secret for decades. She wrote of a time when things were different, when certain truths were kept hidden to protect families and reputations. Sarah imagined Eleanor, a woman she had never met, sitting somewhere long ago, pouring her heart out onto these very pages. She could almost feel the weight of Eleanor's secret, a burden carried alone for so long. The idea that she had another grandmother, one who had written to her from the past, was a lot to take in. It meant her mother, Emily's mother, had a different story than Sarah had always believed. It meant her own identity, her family's history, was more complex and richer than she had ever imagined. It was a truth that was both shocking and, in a strange way, deeply moving. Sarah felt a connection to this unknown woman, Eleanor, a bond forming across the years through the delicate paper and faded ink. She knew that her life and her family's understanding of their past would never be quite the same after this. As Sarah continued to read Eleanor's letter, the story unfolded like a delicate old tapestry. Eleanor wrote of a secret love, a love that was passionate and true, but forbidden by the strict rules of their time. She described meeting a young man, not the one her family had chosen for her, and falling deeply in love. Their meetings were stolen moments, hidden away from prying eyes, filled with whispers and promises. The letter painted a vivid picture of a romance blooming in secret, a beautiful but dangerous flower. Eleanor wrote about the joy she felt with this man, a happiness she had never known before. But with that joy came a great fear, for their love was not accepted. Society back then was very different. and a love like theirs, outside of marriage, was seen as a scandal. Then came the part that made Sarah's eyes blur with tears. Eleanor became pregnant. In those days, a baby born out of wedlock brought shame not only to the mother, but to her entire family. Eleanor, young and scared, was faced with an impossible choice. She wrote about the terrible heartache of realizing she could not keep her baby. She felt she had no other option but to give her up, to ensure the child would have a chance at a good life, a life free from the judgment and hardship that would surely come if she stayed with Eleanor. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces the day I said goodbye to my sweet girl, Eleanor wrote, her words full of a mother's pain. I prayed she would find a loving home, a family who would cherish her as I longed to. That sweet girl was Sarah's mother, the woman she had known and loved her whole life. The realization hit Sarah hard. Her own mother had been given away, a baby born of a secret love. It explained so much, yet also opened up so many new questions. Eleanor described the careful arrangements made, how she entrusted her baby to a kind family, hoping they would raise her as their own. She never forgot her daughter, thinking of her every day, wondering what kind of person she had become. The letter was a confession, a testament to a mother's enduring love, and a plea for understanding from a past that had forced such a heartbreaking decision. Sarah felt a profound sadness for Eleanor, for the secret love she lost, and for the child she had to give away. It was a story of a different time, a different world, but the feelings of love and loss were timeless. As Sarah continued to read Eleanor's poignant words, another stunning piece of the puzzle fell into place. Eleanor, with careful and heartfelt explanations, made it clear that the man Sarah had always known as her grandfather, her mother's father, the stoic but kind man in all the old family photos, was not her mother's biological father. The man who bravely stepped forward to claim my child as his own was a good man, Eleanor wrote, a true gentleman who offered her a name and a future she would not have had otherwise. He loved her as his own, and for that I am forever grateful. Sarah reread the sentence, her mind trying to grasp the full meaning. Her grandfather, the man who had taught her to fish, who had bounced her on his knee, who was the quiet anchor of her mother's life, was not related to her mother by blood. He had chosen to be her father, a truly loving act that Eleanor held in high esteem. This explained why her mother had always been a little distant when talking about her early childhood, why some stories seemed to have missing pieces. The truth was not just hidden. It was a deeply woven secret, protected by kindness and sacrifice. This revelation was profound. It wasn't just a secret love affair. It was a secret parentage that shaped the very foundation of her family. The man Eleanor loved, the biological father, remained unnamed in the letter, a phantom figure in the grand story. But the adoptive father, the grandfather Sarah knew, emerged as an even more heroic figure in her eyes, a man who gave his love and his name without question, knowing the child was not his own. Sarah felt a rush of complex emotions. There was a pang of sadness for the hidden heartache her mother must have carried, or perhaps never even knew about. There was also immense respect for her adoptive grandfather, whose silent strength had provided a stable home and a loving upbringing. And there was a growing sense of awe for Eleanor, who, even in her heartbreak, had ensured her child's future was secure. The letter made it clear that the adoption was handled with the utmost discretion, a common practice in those times to avoid societal judgment. The secret was kept tightly, protecting everyone involved. Sarah looked at the old photographs on her mantelpiece, now seeing them with new eyes. Her mother, as a little girl, standing proudly next to the man Sarah called grandfather. The smiles were real, the love clear. The truth, though shocking, didn't lessen that love. It only deepened its story. As Sarah continued to read Eleanor's elegant script, the depth of her sadness became overwhelmingly clear. Page after page, Eleanor poured out her heart, expressing a deep and lasting regret for not being able to raise her child, Sarah's mother. It wasn't just a decision. It was a wound that had never truly healed. Every day since I last saw her sweet face, a part of my soul has ached, Eleanor wrote, her words almost leaping off the page with raw emotion. I often imagined her growing up, wondered about her first steps, her first words, her laughter. Did she have my eyes? Did she love to read, as I did? Sarah could almost hear Eleanor's voice, heavy with longing, echoing through the decades. Eleanor described the dreams she had, dreams where she was a mother, holding her baby close, watching her grow. These were dreams that could never come true in her waking life, leaving her with a constant, quiet sorrow. She spoke of the sacrifices made, not just by her, but by the unknown father of Sarah's mother, whose love for Eleanor and their child led him to accept such a painful separation. There was no choice for me then, the letter continued. Not if I wanted my daughter to have a life free from shame and hardship. But not a day passed that I didn't think of her, my heart heavy with what might have been. This wasn't a casual regret. It was a lifelong burden of grief and unanswered questions. Eleanor had imagined her daughter's life, her joys, her struggles, all from a distance, never able to be a part of it. Sarah felt a profound wave of sympathy for this woman, her biological grandmother, who had endured such a profound loss. It made her reflect on her own experiences as a mother and grandmother, the sheer joy and unconditional love she felt for her children and grandchildren. To be denied that, to be forced to give it up, was a pain Sarah could barely imagine. The letter was a testament to Eleanor's enduring love, a love that transcended time and separation. It wasn't a bitter letter, but one filled with a quiet dignity, accepting the past while still expressing the deep, human ache of a mother's heart. Sarah felt a tear roll down her cheek, not just for Eleanor, but for the unspoken sorrows that had shaped her own family's story. This regret was a truth that needed to be heard, a pain that needed to be acknowledged, even after so many years. Towards the end of her long, heartfelt letter, Eleanor shared a final, deeply personal wish. After pouring out her story of secret love, heartbreaking loss, and enduring regret, she expressed a profound hope that her secret would one day be known and, more importantly, understood. I have carried this truth in my heart for so many years, Eleanor wrote, her words softening slightly, as if she were speaking directly to Sarah across the decades. It has been a heavy burden, a silent companion. My greatest wish, as I write this, is that one day, when enough time has passed, this letter will be found. And when it is, I hope that the reader, my dear Sarah, will not judge me harshly, but will understand the choices I was forced to make. She explained that she didn't want her life's most painful secret to die with her, buried forever in the past. She longed for her daughter and her daughter's family to eventually know the full truth of their origins, to understand the circumstances that led to her giving up her child. It was a plea for empathy, a desire for her story to be seen not as a scandal, but as a testament to a mother's enduring love in a difficult world. Eleanor wished for forgiveness, not for herself, but for the situation that compelled her actions. She wanted her descendants to know that her decision came from a place of love, a desperate attempt to give her baby the best possible life, even if it meant a life without her. She wanted them to understand the societal pressures of her time, the strict rules that left little room for choices outside the norm. May this letter bring not sorrow, but a deeper understanding of our family's journey, she concluded. May it be a bridge between my past and your present, connecting us through truth and love. Sarah finished reading, the last words lingering in the quiet room. The letter wasn't just a revelation of facts. It was a heartfelt message, a bridge built with words across time. Eleanor hadn't just told a story. She had asked for something precious, to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood by the family she had never known. Sarah felt a profound sense of responsibility. This secret was no longer just Eleanor's. It was now hers to carry and hers to share, as Eleanor had wished. The weight of it was still heavy, but now it was also filled with a new purpose. When Sarah finally finished reading Eleanor's last words, the room was silent except for the gentle tick-tock of the grandfather clock. She sat perfectly still, the delicate yellowed pages resting in her lap, her eyes staring blankly at the wall. The world had shifted on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about her family, about her mother's origins, had been completely upended. A wave of shock washed over her, making her feel lightheaded. It was the kind of shock that didn't scream or shout, but rather settled deep within her bones, reshaping her understanding of reality. Her mother, given up at birth. Her grandfather, not her biological father. A secret love, a heartbroken biological grandmother named Eleanor. It was a story straight out of a novel. Yet it was her own family's truth. Along with the shock came a profound sadness. Sadness for Eleanor, who carried such a heavy secret and longed for her child. Sadness for her own mother, who had lived her life without knowing this fundamental truth about herself, or perhaps had known and kept it silent. Sarah wondered if her mother had ever felt a missing piece, a quiet question in her heart that this letter would have answered. But woven into the sadness was also a deep sense of wonder. Wonder at the strength of Eleanor's love, which had led her to make such a painful choice for her child's future. Wonder at the adoptive grandfather's kindness, taking on a child as his own. Wonder at the intricate way life unfolds, hiding secrets for decades, only to reveal them in the most unexpected ways. It was a wonder that felt almost spiritual, a connection to a past she never knew existed, a testament to enduring human emotion. Sarah picked up the letter again, rereading parts of it, her fingers tracing the elegant script as if trying to physically connect with Eleanor. She felt a strange sense of kinship with this woman, a bond forged through shared history and a revelation that spanned generations. This was her blood, her history, laid bare on these fragile pages. She slowly folded the letter, placing it carefully back into its envelope. The silence of the room seemed to hold the echoes of Eleanor's story. Sarah knew she couldn't keep this to herself. Her family, especially her daughter Emily, needed to know. It was a truth that would shake their foundations. But it was a truth, nonetheless, and Eleanor had wished for it to be understood. Sarah felt a huge weight on her shoulders, but also a strange sense of purpose. As the initial shock and sadness began to settle, Sarah's mind drifted back to her mother. Her dear mother, a quiet woman who had always been loving but kept her own past close to her chest. Now, with Eleanor's letter clutched in her hand, so many small things about her mother clicked into place. Sarah remembered how her mother rarely spoke about her childhood. When Sarah was a little girl, she would often ask her mother to tell her stories about growing up, about her own parents. Her mother would smile gently, sometimes share a brief, general memory, but never delved into details. There were no long, funny tales about her father, no vivid descriptions of her mother's youth. Sarah had always thought it was just her mother's quiet nature, or perhaps that her childhood hadn't been particularly exciting. Now, she understood. It wasn't that her mother didn't want to share. It was that she likely couldn't. Or perhaps she simply didn't know the full story herself. The man Sarah called grandfather had always been a kind presence, a steady figure in their lives. He was loving, but also a man of few words, especially about his own past. Now, Sarah understood his silence too. He had carried a secret, a generous and loving one, but a secret nonetheless. Sarah recalled trying to ask her mother about family history once, trying to draw out stories of great-grandparents or distant relatives. Her mother had simply shrugged, saying, "Oh, our family is rather small, dear. Nothing much to tell." At the time, Sarah accepted it. Now it felt like a careful, almost painful evasion. The pieces fit together, forming a clearer yet more complex picture. Her mother's quietness wasn't just personality. It was possibly a shield, or perhaps a reflection of a deeply held, unspoken truth that even she might not have fully grasped. It explained why there were so few old photographs of her mother as a baby or a very young child, something Sarah had noticed but never questioned deeply. The absence of a rich, detailed family history on her mother's side now made perfect, heartbreaking sense. A new wave of tenderness washed over Sarah for her mother. To live a life, perhaps without knowing your true beginnings, or knowing and choosing to keep it hidden, must have been incredibly hard. The letter wasn't just Eleanor's story. It was her mother's too, a silent narrative that had influenced her entire life. Sarah felt a deep desire to honor both women, to finally bring their stories into the light, as Eleanor had wished. The sun had begun to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. But Sarah barely noticed. Her mind was still reeling from Eleanor's letter. She knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that she couldn't keep this monumental discovery to herself. Eleanor had wished for her story to be known and understood, and Sarah felt a strong responsibility to fulfill that wish. The first person she thought of was her daughter, Emily. Emily was a grown woman, a mother herself, and a person Sarah trusted deeply. This truth about their family's origins belonged to Emily too. It was a part of their shared history, a new root added to their family tree. Sarah knew it would be a shocking revelation, perhaps even upsetting. But it was also a story of great love and sacrifice. Picking up her phone, her fingers felt a little clumsy. She dialed Emily's number, her heart still beating a nervous rhythm. "Emily, dear," Sarah began, trying to keep her voice steady. "Are you busy this evening? I've had an extraordinary day, and I need to talk to you about something very important. It can't wait." Emily, always attuned to her mother's tone, immediately sensed the unusual urgency. "Mom, is everything all right? You sound a little different." "I'm fine, darling, truly," Sarah reassured her. "But this is big, very big. It's about our family, a story from long ago that I've only just learned." She paused, knowing she couldn't explain it all over the phone. "Could you possibly come over soon?" "Of course, Mom," Emily replied, concern clear in her voice. "I'll be there as fast as I can. Give me about 20 minutes. As Sarah waited, she carefully placed Eleanor's letter back into its wooden box. She poured herself a cup of chamomile tea, hoping it would calm her racing thoughts. She knew this conversation with Emily would be difficult. It would mean turning their family history upside down, challenging long-held beliefs. But it was also an opportunity to bring light to a forgotten story, to connect with a biological grandmother they never knew they had, and to understand her own mother in a brand new way. The truth, even when it's surprising, always has a way of setting things free. Sarah felt a mix of nerves and a quiet determination. This was just the beginning of a new chapter for their family. Emily arrived quickly, her face etched with a mix of worry and curiosity. "Mom, what's going on? You sounded so serious on the phone." Sarah took Emily's hand, leading her to the sofa. The chamomile tea she had poured earlier sat untouched. "It's a long story, dear, and quite a surprising one," she began, her voice a little shaky. She went to the coffee table and carefully picked up the wooden box, then the aged envelope. "I was cleaning the attic today, and I found this." Emily's eyes widened as she saw the old, yellowed paper. "A letter? From when?" "From 1953, Sarah replied, her voice barely a whisper. "And it's addressed to my dearest Sarah." Emily looked confused. "But that's your name, Mom. And you weren't even born yet." "Exactly," Sarah said, a nervous chuckle escaping her lips. "Please sit. This is going to take a moment." Sarah sat beside Emily, the letter still in her hands. She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "This letter is from a woman named Eleanor, and Emily. Eleanor was my biological grandmother, your great-grandmother." Emily gasped, her eyes flying to meet Sarah's. "What? Mom, what are you talking about?" Sarah then began to tell the story, slowly and carefully, just as Eleanor had written it. She spoke of the secret love, the difficult times, the impossible choice Eleanor had faced when she became pregnant. She explained how Eleanor had to give up her baby, Sarah's mother, to ensure she had a better life. Sarah then explained the most surprising part, that the kind man they both knew as grandfather was not her mother's birth father, but had lovingly adopted her. As Sarah spoke, Emily's face went through a range of emotions: confusion, shock, disbelief, and then a dawning understanding. She listened intently, her hand gripping Sarah's arm tightly. Sarah made sure to include Eleanor's deep sadness and regret, and her wish for the truth to be known and understood. She even read a few lines from the letter, letting Eleanor's own words speak across the generations. By the time Sarah finished, the room was heavy with the weight of the revelation. Emily sat silently for a moment, her mind clearly processing everything. The world they knew, their family story, had suddenly changed in a profound way. Emily remained silent for a long moment after Sarah finished speaking, her eyes wide, staring at the old letter in her mother's hands. The news had clearly shaken her to her core. Then, a rush of questions poured out, tumbling over each other as her mind tried to make sense of the new, unbelievable facts. "Mom, are you serious? My great-grandmother? We had another great-grandmother we never knew about?" Emily's voice was filled with disbelief. "And Grandpa wasn't really Grandma's father? How is that even possible?" Sarah nodded slowly. "That's what the letter says, dear. Eleanor explains it all. She had to give up your grandmother because of the times they lived in. A secret love and an unexpected baby. But why was it kept such a secret for so long?" Emily pressed, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Grandma never, ever said anything. Not a single word. And you, Mom, you never suspected?" "No, never," Sarah admitted, shaking her head. "I told you, your grandmother was a very private person. And Eleanor explained that in those days, things were very different. A baby born without marriage meant a lot of shame for the family. It was kept secret to protect everyone, especially your grandmother. Emily stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening garden, then turned back to Sarah, her expression a mix of shock and a strange kind of excitement. So, this means our family history isn't what we thought it was at all. There's a whole other side to us. Who was Eleanor's family? Do we have other relatives out there, from her side? Sarah shrugged, a little overwhelmed herself. The letter doesn't say much about Eleanor's family or the biological father. It mostly speaks of her love and her sadness, and her wish for this truth to be known. It's just incredible, Emily said, running a hand through her hair. It's like finding out you're part of a secret club, but one that's been around forever. My head is spinning with questions. What was Eleanor like? What was the real grandfather like? And how did Grandma feel about all this? Did she ever know? The questions kept coming, each one opening a new door in their shared history. Sarah listened patiently, answering what she could, but mostly sharing in Emily's bewilderment. This discovery wasn't just Sarah's. It was now a shared journey for them both, a journey into the hidden chapters of their family's past. The conversation flowed late into the evening. Sarah and Emily talked for hours, the old letter becoming the center of their discussion. They sat side by side, sometimes in thoughtful silence, sometimes speaking over each other in their eagerness to understand. Emily picked up the letter, carefully reading sections for herself, her fingers tracing Eleanor's elegant script. "It's so sad," Emily murmured, her voice soft, "to have to give up your baby and to carry that secret all your life." "Yes," Sarah agreed, "but also so brave in its own way. She wanted a good life for her daughter, our mother, even if it meant she couldn't be a part of it." They talked about the man they knew as grandfather, marveling at his selfless act of love. "He must have been a truly remarkable man," Emily observed, "to take on a child knowing she wasn't his own, and to love her so completely." "He was," Sarah confirmed, a gentle smile touching her lips as she thought of him. He never once made her feel anything but his own daughter. He gave her a stable home, a name, and his unwavering affection. They wondered aloud about the unknown biological father. "Do you think we could ever find out who he was?" Emily asked, a flicker of detective-like curiosity in her eyes. "Or what happened to Eleanor after she wrote this letter?" Sarah sighed. "The letter doesn't give many clues, dear. It was written in a time when such things were deeply hidden. But perhaps, now that the truth is out, we can look more closely." They discussed what this new information meant for their family identity. "It's like we have a whole new branch on our family tree," Emily said. "It doesn't change who Grandma was to us, or who Grandpa was. But it adds a deeper, richer story to our roots." The conversation wasn't easy. It brought up many feelings. There was the lingering sadness, the shock of a hidden past, but also a growing sense of wonder and connection. They felt closer to their ancestors, understanding the sacrifices and loves that had shaped their family in ways they never knew. It was a long night of discovery, of piecing together a story that had been waiting patiently for over 60 years to be heard. As the hours passed and their conversation wound down, a quiet settled between Sarah and Emily. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a lingering sense of bewilderment. Their minds were still grappling with the new shape of their family tree, a picture far more complex than they had ever imagined. There were still so many unanswered questions, loose threads in the tapestry of their past. Who was Eleanor's true love? What happened to him? And how did Eleanor live out the rest of her life after such a profound loss? The confusion was a soft hum in the background of their thoughts. Yet, amidst this lingering uncertainty, a new feeling began to bloom. A deep, unexpected connection to Eleanor. Reading her words, feeling her raw emotion, and understanding the incredible sacrifice she made, forged an invisible bond. Eleanor was no longer just a name on an old letter. She was a real woman, a grandmother they had never known, but now understood on a profound level. I feel like I know her, a little bit, Emily said softly, looking at the letter. Her sadness, her strength, it's all here. It's almost like she's in the room with us. Sarah nodded, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. Yes, I feel it too. A connection, a sense of where some part of us truly comes from. It's like finding a missing piece of ourselves. They felt a strange blend of sorrow for Eleanor's hardships and pride in her resilience. Her story was not just about a secret. It was about enduring love, difficult choices, and the profound impact of a mother's sacrifice. They realized that Eleanor's courage, her ability to make such a heartbreaking decision for the good of her child, was now a part of their own family story. A new thread of strength passed down through generations. This connection to Eleanor didn't lessen their love or respect for their adoptive grandfather or for Sarah's mother. Instead, it added new layers of understanding and appreciation. It broadened their sense of family, making it richer and more textured. They were no longer just the family they thought they were. They were also the descendants of Eleanor, a woman who loved deeply and sacrificed greatly. It was a humbling and deeply moving realization. As the night deepened, Sarah and Emily knew they couldn't solve all the mysteries or process all the emotions in one sitting. The letter held too much weight, too many implications. The most important thing now was to keep Eleanor's story safe. Sarah carefully placed the delicate pages back into the yellowed envelope, then returned it to the small wooden box. "This needs a special place," she said, her voice soft. "Somewhere safe, where it won't get lost or damaged." Emily agreed. "It's a treasure, Mom. Our own family treasure. We should keep it in your old chest, the one with the velvet lining. It's always locked, and it's perfect for something so precious." They decided to store the box in the antique chest in Sarah's bedroom, a sturdy piece of furniture that had been in the family for generations. It felt right, a secure resting place for a secret that had waited so long to be revealed. With the letters safely tucked away, they began to think about what to do next. "We can't just leave it here," Emily said, "not after Eleanor's wish. She wanted us to understand. Maybe there's more to find out." Sarah nodded. "I agree. We have a starting point now. We know Eleanor's name and the year the letter was written. Perhaps we can look into old records, or even try to trace her family." Emily's eyes brightened. "Yes, we could research family history. There are websites and places that help people find their ancestors. We might be able to find out more about Eleanor, and maybe even the biological grandfather." They talked about the possibility of finding living relatives from Eleanor's side of the family. It was a daunting thought, but also an exciting one. The idea of meeting people connected to this hidden branch of their family tree filled them with a renewed sense of purpose. "It won't be easy," Sarah cautioned, "and we might not find anything. But we owe it to Eleanor and to our mother to try, to understand the full story. Emily reached across and squeezed her mother's hand. "We'll do it together, Mom. This is our story now, too." They felt a shared resolve, a quiet determination to honor the past and uncover the remaining pieces of their family's remarkable truth. The night ended not with answers, but with a plan and a promise. After Emily left, promising to start looking into family history resources the very next day, Sarah remained in her armchair. The house was quiet again, but it felt different. The air, once filled with unspoken history, now hummed with the echoes of a truth finally revealed. The weight that had settled in Sarah's heart after reading Eleanor's letter hadn't completely vanished, but it had transformed. It was no longer a burden of confusion and hidden sorrow, but a sense of calm, a new kind of peace. She felt a deep satisfaction knowing that Eleanor's wish had been granted. The secret, kept for so many decades, was no longer a secret. It had been brought into the light, shared, and was beginning to be understood. There was a profound rightness to it, a feeling that a missing piece had finally found its place in the vast puzzle of their family's story. Sarah looked around her cozy old house, the very same house that now held even more memories, both old and newly discovered. The creaking floors, the sunlit dust motes, the familiar scent of old wood, all seemed to whisper a fuller, richer tale. Her life, her mother's life, Emily's life, and even the lives of her grandchildren were now connected to Eleanor's brave and heartbreaking story. This newfound knowledge didn't change the love she felt for her mother or the cherished memories of her grandfather. Instead, it added a layer of depth and understanding, a tapestry woven with more threads than she had ever imagined. It was a testament to love in all its forms, secret love, sacrificing love, and the enduring love of a chosen family. A gentle smile touched Sarah's lips. She had faced the unknown truth and found not destruction, but enrichment. Her family history was not broken. It was simply larger, more complex, and more beautiful for having Eleanor's story within it. She felt a quiet strength, a sense of continuity that stretched back through time, connecting her to generations she had never known. The peace settled over her like a warm blanket, a comfort born from understanding. The past, once a mystery, was now a gift, a story waiting to be fully explored.